This will help me pay taxes. Because us Indians, we have dreams. You've heard of us doing vision quests. But we don't need visions. We have feelings. We want to be lawyers. We want to be college professors. We want to be just a hang around the Ford dealership guy. As a matter of fact, no, I better not tell that. That's a joke that is inappropriate for this time. When I say that, it brought to mind something that brought me here. I talked to Irma White. Irma, you got a beautiful dream. Where you at, Irma?
Over here.
Yeah, she's working for her dream. And everybody's in here working for a dream. Everybody. We're all the same. We're the same. You looked at each other and you smiled. I saw some people shaking hands. That's beautiful. When you walk out of here, walk out with a friend. I got another joke. I know it's a terrible joke, right? I'm always constantly amazed. I get to go down to the Marty Indian School, and I like to talk, as you're finding out. And I do have to give you some time to interact with me. So you got 2 minutes. I think we're scheduled to be here till 9:30, and I'll quit. Somebody notify me at 9:28. We'll interact. I go back to the reservation for a lot of reasons. One thing is when I cross that boundary, I can throw all this stuff off. I'm free. I'm a free man. I'm back amongst my old brown folks. We're brown in the winter. Some of us go to Jamaica to get our tans. Barquisimeto, Venezuela, every now and then. But it's nifty. It's nifty. Yeah, we have some Bureau of Ignorant Affair cops down there, but they know their place. They stay up out of the way. So we have speed limits. None of that stuff. And it just feels good. I can take all this stuff off, and the only thing I'm thinking about then is that I brought 3 pounds of coffee, Folgers, so I can keep Juan Valdez working. And I know that we're going to put on that pot of coffee and we're going to sit and talk. I remember one conversation I had when I was talking about boarding school. It was an elderly gentleman in the old folks home in Marty, South Dakota. Family been around for about 170 years. Frenchman came up the river, married in, liked it, stayed. Most people that do stay. And I asked him about Marty, and I said, you went to Marty Indian School when it opened back in the 1920s, didn't you? He said, yeah. Terrible time. Terrible time. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, they took away my language, beat me up. That's why I asked if anybody went to boarding school. Anybody go to Catholic school? Did you get beat up? Did you deserve it? Did you deserve it? Yeah. Oh, okay, we got some angels in here. I knew this place was blessed. We have some angels. They never got beat up in boarding school. Had to be angels. I talked to him about this. And I know this guy. I've known this guy. I've known his son. His son is a contemporary of mine, and his boy I followed his boy in the sports page. This man hits all the veterans powwows, gets up, always gives a talk in Indian, reminds us who he is and who he's related to. And he was really just getting down on Marty Indian School. He worked there, for heaven's sakes. I said, well, listen. I said, how about your boy? He graduated from me. Yeah, I'm really proud of that boy. Graduated in 1963, played on state championship basketball team. Boy, Marty Indian School, good place, you know. I said, well, your grandson, he's at Marty too. Yeah, well, he isn't as good a basketball player as his dad, but really the other four that play on that same team aren't as good. If they're all as good as he was, they'd be state champions too. But the point is that I know this man can talk Indian. He isn't revolting against Marty taking away his language. He's revolting against it because he was a bad boy and got spanked all the time. That's why he was doing that. That was a joke, man. Okay. Air Jordans. Anybody know what Air Jordans are? When I go down to Marty Indian School, I'm constantly amazed. And it isn't like this anymore because they move much faster than me. But the first time I did it, I saw all these kids carrying boom boxes around and doing, what dance was it? I don't remember the break dance, you know, all these fancy moves and stuff. And all of them were wearing Air Jordans. And it occurred to me, well, Air Jordans are appropriate for Michael Jordan. But for us redskins or brownskins or us beautiful tan people, we should call them Air Indians. Joe! That was a joke. Air Indians. Nikes, Air Indians. Not Air Jordans, Air Indians. That's good. Sorry, sir. That was terrible. I know it was. My elder, too. Often, and almost always, and amongst us, you hear us talk about the circle, sacred circle, and the sacred directions, the four principal directions, and up and down. Within these four directions, we have four colors. We have the yellow, and we have the red, and we have the black, and we have the white. And us Indians, we think that all of us belong in this circle, this sacred circle. And we also believe that all those colors belong in there. We believe that, and we pray for that. And in those sweat lodges tonight, and in those peyote meetings, and in that Episcopal service, and those Catholic services, and those Presbyterian services, which all talk about the same thing. They pray for us, all of us, for the universe, for us people within that. We also use another term, mitakuye oyasi. And we translate that as all my relatives. And when we make our prayers, we make prayers for all people. And therefore, we're all relatives. So I want you to remember, and I always tell my students this, I want you to tell me when you are proud and when you've achieved something and when you're happy. And I also want you to tell me when you're not feeling good, or you need a little pepper-upper, or you just need another human being to talk to. And I want to tell you that too. The message is the same for all of us. We are all members of this circle. We're responsible to make sure that we prepare our next generation of people. That we keep this ground, the sacred ground that we're on, sacred, so that it can sustain our people in the future. For our future is our children, and we are responsible for our children. So I'd like to close this tonight and leave you with a message that someplace out there in what you might consider savage and primitive land, or that you might consider some of the most beautiful places you've ever been and would like to be, that there tonight is somebody sitting in a circle praying for us. And I want you to know that you are all my relatives. Mitakuye Oyasi. Thank you. Be done. I left you time to interact. Don't be shy. Do we have any questions? Yes.
Do you feel that there seems to be more interest taking place of Native Americans in films? Will there be a time that the media will let Native American writers also take their place as well?
Made into a screenplay that,
Right.
well, we have Indian writers. We have one of the most fantastic writers right in our audience, and I don't know how many people had a chance to listen to her talk today on the power of horses. I truly apologize. I was working on some administrative gobbledygook on a word processor. The stories are there. It's a matter of economics. The stories are there. We have the people with the expertise. It's just a matter of economics. And I think that with this awareness, and we have people that are just ready to break in. But understand, what you know of people that make movies, we have to have Indians become as debauched as they are. No. Incidentally, I think the best movie I've ever seen is The Godfather. And that's where I get my images of movie moguls. Sorry. No, we have the expertise, and we have Indians that are now doing production that are showing up in theaters. And Mike Smith, who is a Sisseton from Sisseton, South Dakota, has founded the Institute of American Indian Films in San Francisco, and he every year puts on a festival, and you can go there and see. Well, you can see all the films done by independent Indian producers. I remember the first time I went in 1974, I met Will Sampson. Was it 74? Will Sampson, who was in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. They're there. It's just a matter of, at some point, when they can collect the money, the fantastic amount of money it makes, we will have Indians actually producing movies on a scale that we would pay $5 or $10 to see. Sure. And I don't know, is anybody aware of any Indian that has produced a mega maker or whatever, mega money maker? Jeez, that's beautiful. Two little well-minded girls that hung in there. Yes.
I appreciate your acknowledgement that we're all relatives, and that feels really good to me. It feels warm. I also recently heard Andy Smith speak. She's from Women of All Red Nations, and she spoke about a lot of things, uninformed sterilizations, using American Indians as more or less guinea pigs in immunization testing and things like this. Things that I felt so angry about and really sad and angry. And where I also feel, I want that warm, we're all related, wonderful feeling. I felt angry today when Elizabeth was reading about the capturing and damming of the great rivers. I'm going to ask you if you've feel
Channel it.
angry. I assume you feel angry. What do you do with it?
You
What do
channel
do
it.
with anger?
You channel your energies into changing things. And along with that, understand too that the blacks have been, were used in certain medical treatments, and the whole population has been used too. For instance, Salk vaccine. We've all taken Salk vaccine, and we were all guinea pigs for Salk vaccine. I remember thalidomide babies that came out, 20 years ago. The women that took this birth control pill, I believe it was, that created deformities in the children. Agent Orange, use in Vietnam, which is affecting all of us that are Vietnam veterans that came in contact with it. But it isn't just Agent Orange in Vietnam, it's Agent Orange that is used here in this country, to say nothing about the herbicides and all these pesticides and things that have been put on this land so we could feed food, make food, to say nothing about all of it that went into the mighty Missouri River and fed into the Mississippi River and went out and polluted the Caribbean, which really, I absolutely refuse to eat anything out of the water anymore. The whole world, when I say it's good to channel yourself into a cause, but be aware and don't let that anger stop you. Use it constructively, and also be aware that there's all these fronts. Alcohol, the worst, to me, pardon me, I don't want to offend anybody, but to me, alcohol is one of the most insidious diseases and horrors that are perpetuated on the human race. They're all there. And that's something we have. It's easy. I was up on Bear Butte last summer. I wasn't doing any holy thing, okay? I'm just an ordinary I'm just plain old Joe. I took my boy out there, and we just walked up there. And it was nice and quiet, and it was beautiful. And I looked up to the sky in the northwest, and I saw this black dot up there, and I said, well, that's a crow. And I was just happened to be looking towards the southwest, thinking, and about 5 minutes later I looked back up and this black dot had gone a little bigger. And about 5 minutes later I could recognize it. It was one of these new B-1 bombers, I believe they call it. And about 5 minutes later, 3 of them crossed in front of me, and they just blotted out the sky, and I was scared. And I'm a Marine. Not too many things scare me. And I was scared for all my relatives for 2 reasons. One is that we use those machines to go over there and kill 150,000 Iraqi people. We massacred that many people. We just virtually destroyed a very ancient city. But I think the real horror to me was the fact that we had channeled so much of our resources into these planes. And I thought, one of those planes, just one of those planes, $1.3 billion is more than the budget of South Dakota. And they're talking about cutting back services. They're talking about cutting back WIC. The most important thing is our children, and they're talking about cutting back WIC. They're talking about cutting back services that we need as human beings to build this plane, and what good does it do us? So I think that that's the most important thing, that we look and we talk to these people that we elect. Talk to them. I do. They don't even talk to me anymore. I have to play the telephone game, right? And I beg them. I beg them to change. I pay a horrendous amount of taxes, and my son and my daughter is going to pay a tremendous lot of taxes. My grandchildren are going to pay a lot of taxes. And that takes away from the standard and the quality of life that we could enjoy. I feel bad. But we'll change. I know we change. Don't walk away here like, it's something we can't do. It's easy to do. It's easy to do. You get off your buns and you go to work and you make those phone calls and you tell those phonies, hey, I don't want you wasting my money. Unless you waste it. If you waste it, then that's cool. Doesn't bother you. Any other questions? Yes.
My friend told me there's some educator positions available on Indian reservations. How would I find out more information about that?
There was a book came out that was published by the Ford Foundation. It's called Tribal Colleges. And it should be in your library. If it isn't, talk to your acquisition librarian and ask them to get it for you. The other thing to do is call my office, and I will get you the telephone numbers. You can call, I won't be there, but that. No, we have those numbers. Yeah. Be aware of this also, though, that when I talked about brain drain on reservations, we're finding now the most beautiful thing, I think, is that those brains are coming back to the reservations. And you're beginning to see, I look at, and I come basically, well, no, I come from an education point of view. And I'm not saying education solves every problem. But I'm seeing more people going off and going to college and returning back to reservations. So I think that will have a beneficial effect on a long-term effect. Yes?
You see the Indian people as victims.
You're only a victim if you let yourself be.
Thank you.
Yeah.
In terms of federal government's dealings in Indian country, what is you feel the most important thing for us to understand about our government?
I teach a course on that. And those kids leave that place as far away from the answers. Government. The government is a group of people that band together to provide for the common welfare in this country, and that's in the Constitution. The common welfare includes people of all races. I think if we would really take a good look at reaffirm that Constitution in our mind and look at those people who we ask to take it from the idea to the implementation. I think that's the most important thing, is the implementation. And that's where you would then begin to see that if you provide for the common welfare, which is most important, to build a bomber that costs $1.3 billion, or to provide health care for people that don't have insurance, which is the most important thing. And I'm not, that's an answer that I'm sure that there are people in here that could give a totally opposite point of view. And that's just the way I feel about it. I believe in the Constitution. We've been excluded from it, but I will say this, the framers of it took a great idea from the Indian people, and they changed it around and made it from a matriarchal system to a patriarchal system. And we talked to Ben Franklin and all those boys about that. TJ, G-Dub, all those guys. But they mentioned us Indians in it. So they were thinking about us. But first of all, they had to get our land. But they were intelligent. And I had a student listen to a speech I gave and put me out of context because I said, when those land cession treaties were signed, the government made a promise. They took land and they promised to pay the Indian back. Now, the government obviously thought they were getting a dang good deal. Why? Because they were getting land, and land, in the present way we interpret land, as land as well. Any real estate dealers? Right now, it's not going good, right? But it's good trade at the time. They knew that they were obtaining an asset that would make money. So they could, in fact, say to us Indians that, well, in exchange for this land that we're taking, we're going to give you a diminished portion. You're going to move on to that, and then we're going to provide education, and we're going to provide for the health of you. That's a good deal for both people, because we weren't citizens in 1858. Legally, we weren't citizens. There were ways we could be citizens, but not all of us were. So the government had to make a deal with us, and once they took the land and told us that they were going to provide these services for us, in essence, they gave us constitutional protection until 1924 when we were made full-fledged citizens. By then, I don't know too many Indians who were begging to be made citizens. The reason they made citizens is to pay us benefits for fighting in World War I. They sent us over there and we did the job. Came back and said, well, hey, we're veterans. We're entitled to some privileges here. And we said, well, you can't be. You're not a citizen. So they did make a citizen. But tying us into that Constitution, you know, this person got real angry when I told him. I said, hey, it's in the treaty. It's a land cession treaty. The government took this land from us, but they promised to pay education and also promised to help us with hospitals. Well, the argument, of course, then gets on, well, how good of health care do you get from public health service? I don't know that, and I can't argue that. In terms of education, let me tell you, I did not get a free education other than the fact that I did attend public schools, but I did achieve in public schools. I got the grades. And I also went to graduate school, and I also got good grades, and I also got scholarship, but I also came out of there owing the government a whole bunch of money. That's why I said that earlier. I have Indian friends who were guaranteed education. I have friends who got their education in Harvard and now owe over $100,000 for their education. Pretty expensive education. So, you know, that argument there, we never did get free education. We paid for it. We paid for it on loans today. We also lost that particular piece of wealth. But it comes back to us. It comes back. Yes.
But isn't it better to get your education that way? Isn't it true? I mean, as the welfare system works, or as anything works in this country, once you've been given something, you would put yourself in some kind of servitude. Isn't it better to have the sovereignty and
Go ahead.
to accomplish the things of your own? I too paid for my education, and could have probably went through channels through different Indian groups and got an education paid for. But I didn't want to owe anybody anything. I wanted to get my education myself and have that pride.
Well, that's admirable, and I congratulate you. That's beautiful, as a matter of fact. But no, it isn't welfare. I mean, it's said that way. Welfare. It's the images that we have of welfare, isn't it? It's the images. Now, if you are a woman who receives a divorce and your husband refuses to pay some sort of support payment, then you go to the welfare office and you're viewed negatively. Now, if you're a farmer who has 160 acres of land, but they only want you to produce on 120, but you have 150, they'll give you a subsidy for not farming that thing. But it's called a subsidy. That's welfare. So, you know, it's just the way we look at these things. I call myself, you know, certified prime time registered Indian. Because not only was I born with the number, I'm registered. I also graduated from public schools, attended public universities, and served the country in the military, time of war and all that sort of stuff. I got part of my education on GI Bill, but I also had to buy into that great lending system in the United States. I mean, after all, the name of America is money, isn't it? Or business? Business, America's business? Yeah, Maria, aren't you glad I didn't tell you, Joe? About that Ford dealer guy? No, I'm not going to New Delhi.
I wanted to make a comment here, Leonard, if I may.
Be prepared. What time is it? Maria is the liaison to the governor, and she worked with the House of, not you'll refute, what do you call that? The legislature. Yes, ma'am, it's yours. Thank you.
I would like to address what you said, and what your response was to it, Leonard, on the treaties and on the analogy that was just given. If I purchased from you your automobile, that then becomes my property. But in
I
exchange
don't know.
for that,
The bank owns it.
say you paid off at the bank. And you're one of those neighbor up. But if I purchased your vehicle and for X number of dollars, I must pay you that X number of dollars before the automobile becomes mine. In essence, when we speak of the treaty rights of Indian tribes, the very basic concept of understanding what a treaty is something that seems to be missing here.
Oh, okay.
Because, number one, the treaties that were negotiated between the tribes and the federal government are binding contracts.
There you go. Thank you.
And they are also, if you purchased my land from me and you didn't pay me, I have the right to come back and take that land back away from you.
That's
And I'll pay
radicalism.
Okay? Everybody seems to view the rights of Indian people under the treaties. Each tribe negotiated a treaty with the United States government, and that is a binding contract between that specific tribe and the federal government. These are ratified in Congress. They are not to be renegotiated. These treaties then state that you, under our treaty with the United States, states that you will educate, you'll take care of the health care and the housing of all of our grandchildren into perpetuity. If you do not keep your promise, then the one side finds you in violation. You can null and void that contract. Now, the Indian people have the right to go to world court, but because this country does not recognize world court, it's a moot. When you talk about accepting welfare, when the Indian person goes to this government and says, this child is going to be educated according to the treaty rights, and they give him a grant to go to school, that is not charity, that is a right. There is a difference. And I think many times people do not understand what treaties are and what those rights represent. Indian people are not in the welfare system. And that is the one myth, if nothing else gets dispelled in this room with anybody. I hope it's fact.
Excuse me, may I follow up on that?
Okay, but I wanted to do one thing. I want you to know that this woman browbeat a committee to be dead for 22 hours, and in order to get rid of her, they funded a program. And they did. But the problem we had here, it was a human program. It was a program that was aimed at helping people that were lost in alcohol. And the state legislature here decided that that was an important priority for them, and they cut it. And she heard about it and went down and just, don't hang around her. If you go have coffee with her, figure on being 5 hours. Be able to buy a lot of coffee. Yeah. Right, yeah.
I was very glad that Maria brought that up because I don't think a lot of the general public knows about entitlements. And one of the awful things, among others, that happens in a termination process is the entitlements are cut off, the tribe loses its status, is funneled into a welfare system that can't take care of the existing people as it stands, and more are pushed into them, and it's just destruction. It happened to the Menominee that I know of, for sure. And the system of entitlements and welfare are just like night and day. It's just not the same at all.
Yeah, and that, once you're put into that system, your color doesn't mean anything. I mean, then you are, what do you call that, disenfranchised. You really are, you're a fringe, very fringe
I'd
citizen.
like to clarify what
Yeah.
I meant by what I said. I was using the welfare system as a similarity in whites, blacks, and Indians that are in the welfare system. What I'm saying is that the Indian people, before pre-white contact, did not lean on anybody or anything, and they solved their own problems and they maintained their own society. Isn't this, when Washington came in and offered us this, yes, we accepted it, and I understand that, and it's very important that we have that. But isn't that undercutting the fabric of the Indian society by, giving the Indian people, something to fall back on when they used to fall back on their own intuition, their own intelligence, their own, you know what I'm saying? That's what
Absolutely. And you're making a great point. And that's something that at some point you're going to have to address and understand that Indians had governing structures, and Indians aren't any different than anybody else. We had people that would practice those 4 cardinal virtues, and in order for those people that had less or were less talented in these sorts of things that depended on somebody, they would go to that person that was a standout in that society. And when I look at human beings, genius of any sort does not and is not monopolized by one race. Genius is found in all races, whatever it is, making money, writing, talking, hitting a baseball. That's another stereotype I just want to mention a little bit. It bugs me. It just bugs me to death about this work ethic thing. My gosh, work ethic is defined in Puritan terms, right? So what happens is the English try to monopolize that, and that's bull-hooey. I'm here to tell you it's different, because I sleep about 5 hours a day, when it takes me about 5 hours to restore myself. And you'll never see me plop down in front of TV. I don't know why. I'd rather read a book than do anything else. And a whole bunch of Indian folks just like that. The stereotype I want to talk about just briefly, and I'll say this Monday night, I want y'all to be there, or Sunday night. It bugs me in all white South Dakota that we import black players to play sports for us. Plain and simple, it's meat. It's meat. And yet these hypocrites can stand there and say, well, these blacks, they're naturally talented. And I know better than that, because I listen to those guys. You know why they are starring on our athletic fields? Because if you listen to them, they will tell you that they are on the courts 8 to 10 hours a day working. Working. And that's why they have those museums, don't they hire anybody else. They work at it, that's why they're there. And Indians are the same way. Yes. Lance, don't do that to me. Yes,
Now
yeah.
that I'm really rich.
This is the real Redskin.
I'm just gonna say, in relation to the welfare and all that, people always think Indians get all this free money too. And it's, if you want to take this analogy, like they got this big payment, whatever, you want to take the analogy to a corporate shareholder, try being a corporation, and this payment, this monthly payment, according to resources or bingo or whatever, it's no more than anybody that owns a share in some stock get a monthly payment on something as a member of a corporate body. It's not free money. You own a share in something as a tribe of the people. So there's no such thing as free money either.
Yeah, and they're investigating that. A lot of that money that was exchanged in exchange for this land was put into trust accounts, which were controlled by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Bureau of Indian Affairs, okay, I'm sorry. Well, they're finding out that they really mismanaged a lot of that money. I'm going back and check my lineage. I might have a little pumpkin. I heard we get a big payment. Yeah, I had general understanding of that.
One of the things, one of the major misconceptions though is in terms of the idea where the white world comes from when they see Indians get a monthly check. That's one of the largest myths that exist. And you hear that, it's a universal kind of question or answer, or Indians have money. In fact, where I work, I heard about the poems a month ago. So a number of white people calling in because they thought they were Indian ancestors and they wanted part of this monthly money. So I basically told them the truth. I said, you have to understand where we're coming from here is that out of the Dolls Act, when we received our allotment, 40 acres, that mother and father would have children, right? And that then when they die, they had heirs. And it comes back to being farmers also. We weren't farmers, we were agrarian stock, so to speak. And as a result, these people who lived on this allotment land allowed the farmers to rent it. Those monies were paid into the Bureau of Indian Affairs, into bank accounts. And once a month, they sent out a check, an allotment check. In other words, it was their lease money. And so they got a check once a month. Okay? As the parents died, then you had 8 children, and they got an eighth of that monthly check. So now I get a check here once a year, and I get about 69 cents. That's my monthly check. And that's a year. Okay, I get 69 cents for a year because there are about 1,000 people that have airship to that 1 acre. So you got maybe a clear misconception. Indians do not get monthly checks. We did at one time, but it was lease money. If you owned a house and you rented it out, and they paid you rent once a month, would I say that the government's paying you? No. And you tell me, I'll be deeply offended and say, I own that house, and they're renting it from me. So it's my capital. It's my profit. tribal coffers, in which they use to buy the medicine, buy the food, provide the social services, make the tribal court work, pay the police officers that run the government. That's what we're doing. We're moving into a much more high-tech world now and coming to a realization that this world that we now have come into, which is an artificial world, okay, deals with money. So we have to think about moving into that realm. We don't have to believe in it, we just have to move into it so we can feed ourselves. But that's a process, just an explanation.
But really the thing is, in traditional society, you were measured by what you had, but what you could give to people.
Yeah, but you had to get it. Yes.
I'd be interested in your views about the importance of these Indian casinos as a solution, or is it more, going to lead to more problems than it's going to solve?
From my personal point of view, I will bet a banana split